In a scientific research lab, there's a strange girl who is an AI hologram, talking about alchemy and reviewing incomprehensible data. Then she announces that Mingfei has finally returned. After that, we go to a large train station in a foreign country, where an officer is standing with our protagonist, who is carrying many bags. The officer asks our protagonist, Mingfei, if he is a homeless person begging for money. But Mingfei gets very upset when the officer says this, insisting that he's just asking for directions to the CC line and begging to see the card with the name of that line. The officer apologizes, saying he's never heard of the CC line, and suggests that if Mingfei is homeless and needs money, he should contact his country's embassy for help and funds. Feeling humiliated, Mingfei reaches into his pocket and pulls out some money, insisting he's not homeless, though he doesn't have much. Then, Mingfei blames himself for believing the strange woman who appeared in his life. He recalls her describing the way, exit the airport, then go to the train station where he'll find a special train on the CC line, which will take him to Castle University. Mingfei doesn't understand what's happening and thinks he's been tricked. But his hunger leads him to a restaurant to buy a hamburger. However, the staff tell him that homeless people aren't allowed in. He yells at them, saying he's not homeless and has money. Then two homeless people call him to join them, but he yells at them too, insisting he's not homeless and has money. Suddenly, a voice behind him says, "If you're not homeless and have money, give me some." Mingfei loses his temper completely, bewildered by this strange country. He turns to the beggar, who gives him a lesson in standing his ground, shouting in English that he's broke and doesn't have money to give. The beggar notices Mingfei looks Chinese and speaks to him in Chinese, asking his name. Mingfei pretends to be Japanese, replying in Japanese that he doesn't speak Chinese. The beggar sees through this and says Mingfei doesn't look Japanese. Mingfei then tries speaking Korean and starts swearing. The beggar tells him to stop swearing and dramatically reveals that he's not a beggar but a respectable student named Finger. He adds that he sympathizes with Mingfei because he's a student in a tough situation too. Finger begs in a much more sophisticated way, asking Mingfei for money to buy a drink and offering to help him get where he needs to go. Finger notices Mingfei's CC line train ticket and asks if he's from Castle University. Mingfei gets scared and steps back, asking if there's a problem being from Castle University. Finger looks at him for a moment before dramatically saying he's his senior at the university. Mingfei, tired of Finger's lies, asks why he's lying for a drink, accusing him of having no pride as a beggar. Finger calmly shows his own CC line train ticket. Mingfei's annoyance turns to joy as he finally finds someone to guide him in this strange country. Mingfei eagerly tells Finger his name and country and starts sharing his life story. But Finger takes the little money Mingfei has to buy a drink, a form of bullying in our world. Finger takes Mingfei under his wing, asking him which year he's in. Finger replies with boredom, saying he's in his 8th year, explaining that students usually graduate after 4 or 5 years. He decided to become a legend by giving the college the honor of hosting him, failing 4 years in a row, making him the most famous student at the university. The two sit at the station until late at night, with the station empty except for them. Mingfei asks Finger if he's ridden the CC line train before. Finger replies that he has and that the line is hidden with no set schedule. Finger explains that the school is in the mountains and the only way in or out is by train. Finger, the famous senior, tells Mingfei that if a student's level is high, the professor himself will come to pick them up. If not, they have to wait like everyone else for their turn. Mingfei is surprised that Finger, a student at Castle University for 8 years, has such a low level. Just as Mingfei wants to ask more questions, Finger falls asleep and starts snoring. Mingfei also falls asleep and dreams of a bell ringing, a big moon in the sky, people running from a fire, and jumping off a mountain. He wakes up scared, not finding Finger. He looks out the window and sees a huge moon. He gets up and looks at it, suddenly seeing a small child sitting on the ground. The child tells him that when the bell rings, Mingfei's past will come to haunt him, asking if he's ready to face it. The child adds that the bronze mountain's peak will melt, the seas will boil, the essence of the earth will be revealed, and the coming storm will destroy everything. The child asks again if Mingfei is ready to face all this. Mingfei approaches the child, asking if he's hungry or knows his parents' phone number. The child laughs, saying despite the many years that have passed, Mingfei is still kind and hasn't changed. He adds that he still pities Mingfei and then starts to burn. But Mingfei wakes up in terror, realizing it was a dream, and finds Finger shouting at him to grab his bags because the train has arrived. Mingfei wonders if it was a dream when a zombie-like staff member arrives, announcing for passengers of the CC 1000 train to prepare their tickets and belongings. Seeing the staff member, Mingfei thinks he looks like a ghost, and the train must be headed to hell. The staff member knows Finger, saying his rank has dropped to F, surprised as Finger started at A, and instead of improving, he disgracefully and hilariously declined. Mingfei introduces himself to the staff member, saying his name and that he's a new student. The staff member goes silent for a long time, then runs like a madman with the bell, shouting that the new student Mingfei of S rank has arrived. Finger is also shocked by Mingfei's level, wondering why no one came to greet him. The staff member, finally returning to normal, tells Mingfei that Professor Guderian should have come to greet him personally. They tell him if he enters his card into the device, a special train will come just for him to take him to the university. When Mingfei tries it, the whole station lights up to welcome him. Finger says this is the proper welcome for S-level students. Suddenly, everyone in the station turns into zombies, welcoming Mingfei, who doesn't understand anything. Then a very luxurious and fast train arrives, the CC-1000 train. When Mingfei boards, he's warmly welcomed by Professor Guderian with a big hug, saying he was very worried that Mingfei might refuse to enter Castle University. Mingfei changes his clothes and puts on the university uniform, and the professor begins to tell him the instructions he needs before arriving at the university. Here, the professor kicks finger out and has Mingfei sign a non-disclosure agreement. The professor starts with the basic information, saying that studying at the university takes 4 or 5 years, and though they are an accredited university, their curriculum is unusual. He says they conduct intensive research on dragons, and adds that dragons are considered mythical creatures worldwide, but at Castle University, they research and kill them. The professor also mentions that not many people know dragons are real creatures, and that people study and kill them. He says humanity has been fighting dragons for thousands of years, and dragons have played a significant and hidden role in human history. The professor tells Mingfei that the goal of Castle University is to train new heroes to fight dragons. After this epic introduction, Mingfei zones out, looking at the professor with pity, thinking the professor must be crazy. Mingfei suggests the professor see a psychiatrist because his condition is serious. Suddenly, everything goes dark and Mingfei is startled. The young boy who appeared at the station appears again, telling him that what the professor said is true. Mingfei turns to the boy, surprised that he's traveling with them on the same train, especially since he didn't see him board. The boy says he boarded at the same time. Mingfei asks the boy why he talks like a ghost, but the boy tells him to look out the train window, welcoming him to the land of dragons. There, Mingfei sees a strange mountain that looks like a creature sleeping on it. The boy begins to tell Mingfei about Nidhogg, the first dragon, the Black Emperor dragon, saying it was killed 10,000 years ago on its throne, a mountain once covered in ice and snow, and its killers left its body on the mountain peak. The boy appears sad while telling the story of the dragon's death. Mingfei asks if he's connected to the dragon, but the boy says on the contrary, he believes its death was good. Mingfei opens his eyes and finds himself still on the train with Professor Guderian, who tells him he fainted during the lecture. The professor assumes Mingfei fainted from fear, but Mingfei says he's not afraid of dragons. He's scared because they're taking him to a strange place he knows nothing about. Then someone enters, telling the professor he brought the evidence as ordered. The staff member introduces himself to Mingfei as Toyama, saying it's his first time meeting a genius of S rank in 40 years. Mingfei asks if the other genius is still at the school, but Toyama replies no, as he shot himself in the head. Professor Guderian interrupts, suggesting they talk about the evidence instead. The first piece of evidence is a scale. The professor tells Mingfei to try shooting at the scale, knowing Mingfei has experience with guns from his military service. Mingfei takes the gun and shoots at the scale, which remains unaffected. Mingfei says this isn't evidence, as it could be advanced armor. The professor expected this and presents a second piece of evidence, explaining that killing a dragon is very difficult. Even if killed, its body remains and its spirit will eventually revive it. They show a small dragon in a solution, but Mingfei insists it must be a well-made puppet. Professor Guderian is almost swearing that dragons are real. Mingfei approaches the dragon, which suddenly wakes up and breathes fire, shocking everyone. They claim Mingfei must be the reason. Mingfei stands firmly, looking calmly. Suddenly, the dragon falls back asleep. The professor tells Mingfei it's amazing he could wake the dragon, but Mingfei is silent, staring at the dragon until he collapses in shock. When Mingfei recovers, he asks the professor if he can withdraw from the university. The professor says he can, but they would erase his memory, possibly making him a bit stupid and making it hard to join another university. The professor tells Mingfei the world is much larger than we imagine, opening a door behind him and welcoming Mingfei to the real world, to Castle University. Mingfei arrives at the university, and Professor Guderian tells him that the strongest dragons are sleeping inside Shin, which is why they use the language of that country in their contracts. He also says that Mingfei's mission is to infiltrate Shin and kill the Emperor Dragon. No one is there, and the place is quiet. Mingfei asks Professor Guderian why, and suddenly, the professor realizes that there is no one around. He starts ringing the alarm bell and says he forgot what day it is. Then, shooting starts. Mingfei is scared and asks what the hell is happening. Professor Guderian tells him that the university's student union president, Caesar, doesn't like the subjects they teach and rejects them. There are soldiers and gunfire everywhere, and Mingfei is confused. While the professor explains what's happening, he gets shot and collapses. The two sides are fighting relentlessly. Mingfei is terrified by what he sees. Most of the soldiers on both sides die, but the battle continues. Eventually, only 3 remain on each side. The leaders agree to face off in a duel. One says he'll use the dictator while the other will use Murasame, and they fight in the university courtyard. With the gunfire paused, Mingfei runs to get a doctor for Professor Guderian. The leaders start by praising each other's improved skills before fighting with swords. Mingfei watches from a distance. Suddenly, a girl drops down from above, pointing a gun at his head and telling him to get down. She aims at a target behind him, but a student from the other team shoots her first, and she falls. Mingfei starts hallucinating. The young boy in his mind tells him he could kill them all for him. The girl who fired the shot tells Chu Ziheng there's no need to fight anymore because they've won. Mingfei grabs the fallen girl's gun and starts shooting, killing everyone. Feeling his strength fade, Mingfei leans against a wall and falls asleep until the school bell rings. He wakes up to find another army approaching and raises his hands in fear, but realizes they are nurses coming to help the students. The nurses complain about having to repeat this silly game. Another person arrives, cursing the students for neglecting their studies and wasting the school's budget. He turns to Mingfei, asking if he's a new student. When Mingfei says yes, the man scolds him for participating in this as a new student, telling him he's old enough to know better and shouldn't be involved in this mess. He yells about the cost of repairs. Suddenly, Professor Guderian, who was supposedly injured, sits beside Mingfei, explaining that the man is Professor Klein, his friend, responsible for the school's budget and discipline, which is why he's so strict. Mingfei realizes he's talking to Professor Guderian, who he thought was dead, and gets scared, thinking he might be a ghost. He starts saying weird things to ward off the spirit. Mingfei tells Professor Klein to use his shiny bald head to reflect light and burn Guderian's evil spirit. Guderian assures Mingfei that he's alive and not a ghost. Mingfei accuses him of lying, pointing to the blood on his chest. Guderian explains that today is Freedom Day, and the students were training with live ammunition. It's not a war, but a school-sanctioned event. He shows Mingfei the ammunition, which is a tranquilizer. When it hits someone, it vaporizes and leaves a red mark like blood, so no one gets hurt. Guderian uses himself as an example, shooting himself to prove it's safe. The tranquilizer knocks him out. Mingfei looks at the girl with red hair and sees she's still asleep. The school returns to normal, students walking around as if they weren't just lying on the ground. Professor Klein is annoyed because the students are still making a mess. Klein threatens to cancel Freedom Day because it's costing the school too much. Chu Zihang approaches and recites the school rules. 1. No outsiders allowed. 2. No causing harm to anyone. 3. Students must not touch the alchemy equipment in the ice room. Chu Zihang argues that no rules were broken, so they didn't violate any laws, and Klein can't cancel the day. Klein gets angrier and calls the principal to complain about the students, saying they use the school as a battlefield and the repair costs will be high. The green area was severely damaged. When the principal asks Caesar about the damaged green areas, Caesar confidently says he can make better ones and even add a fountain with his father's money. The principal laughs, saying he's joking and happy they had fun because Freedom Day is a gift for them. He assures them not to worry about the money as the school will cover the repairs, and hopes to join them next year. The students cheer for the principal, and Mingfei joins in, praising the principal's personality, while Professor Klein stands beside him, annoyed. The principal asks Klein if Mingfei has arrived and registered for his class. Klein asks for his name, and when he learns it's Mingfei, he hands him the phone to speak with the principal. Mingfei tells the principal he just arrived and will definitely register for his class. The principal welcomes him, saying he's impressed that he defeated Caesar on his first day and is excited to see their new S-rank student. Professor Klein advises Mingfei to head to the dormitory, pointing out the other students glaring at him. Scared, Mingfei asks Klein for directions to the dorm. When Mingfei reaches his room, he discovers he has a roommate, Finger. Finger takes Mingfei on a tour around the school, explaining everything about Yahello, which consists of words and movements used by dragons and humans with hybrid blood, allowing them to use different elements and abilities. Mingfei asks Finger about the big tree statue at the university, and Finger tells him that it's a statue of the World Tree, under which lies the Black Dragon Emperor. This tree is the emblem of Castle University. Later, Professor Guderian arrives looking for Mingfei and asks him if he has learned about Yenling. Mingfei responds that he has only learned the basics, so Professor Guderian informs him that he will undergo a test tomorrow. Professor Guderian takes Mingfei back to the dormitory and tells him that tomorrow he will take the 3E test. Mingfei is puzzled by the name and asks what the test is about. Professor Guderian explains that it is a bloodline test and says it should be very easy for someone ranked S like Mingfei. Guderian admits that he couldn't suppress his desire to know Mingfei's bloodline and shows him a music box he borrowed from the ice room. Professor Guderian explains to Mingfei that in the past, the Black Dragon Emperor would roar from his throne, and other dragons would turn and kneel towards the throne regardless of the distance. He continues, saying that technicians in Dagon City learned how to make this box to hear the Dragon Emperor's voice anytime. He adds that the dragon's language is the beginning of Yenling, and the strongest Yenling is the Emperor's Yenling. Despite the explanation, Mingfei doesn't understand a word and questions whether these are even human words. Professor Guderian assures him that this is normal as he just arrived at the university and suggests they conduct a practical experiment. He then plays the Dragon Emperor's sound for Mingfei, who listens intently. After the piece ends, Professor Guderian excitedly asks if Mingfei felt the dragon blood's call. Mingfei disappoints him by yawning and saying the piece made him sleepy. Guderian desperately asks if he felt anything or saw any vision, but Mingfei insists he saw nothing. Professor Guderian suggests that Mingfei's human genes might have overpowered his dragon genes, but Mingfei speculates that he might just be an ordinary human. Guderian, however, insists that the headmaster couldn't have been wrong about Mingfei's classification and rushes to see the headmaster, leaving Mingfei and Finger alone. Finger has an important task to spread the news around the school that Mingfei did not respond to the Black Dragon Emperor's call. After completing his mission, he talks to a clearly distressed Mingfei. Mingfei confides in Finger that this journey feels like a dream to him and expresses his fear of failing the 3E test, as it could lead to them brainwashing him and sending him back home. Finger asks if Mingfei wants to go home, but Mingfei says he wants to stay at the university. Finger then shocks him by asking his opinion on cheating, and Mingfei initially acts righteous, saying he would never cheat. However, when Finger reveals that he has the exam questions, Mingfei abandons his pretense and offers to buy Finger dinner. Next, we see Caesar addressing the students, telling them they have lost their right to the Norton House after their defeat on Freedom Day and that this will be their last meeting there. The students are upset, claiming the shot that made them lose was a cheat. Caesar tells them that their inability to accept defeat is a sign of weakness. He mentions that the Leonhardt Society is maintaining its silence and that Chu Zihong has accepted his defeat. Suddenly, a red-haired girl named Nono tells Caesar that there is a new announcement on the school website, revealing that the new student ranked S did not respond to the Emperor's Yenling. The news quickly spreads to Chu Zihong, and everyone is puzzled by this development. Professor Guderian runs and calls Professor Klein to meet him at the library, informing him of what happened during the test. In the library, Professor Guderian says that Chu Zihong's bloodline is so pure that no one can look him in the eye, making it impossible that Mingfei's classification is wrong since he shot Chu Zihong. However, Mingfei also showed no response to the Black Dragon Emperor's call, prompting Professor Klein to investigate further. He digs out old documents about someone named the White Sovereign, who had immense power rivaling that of the Black Dragon. He explains that there was a prophecy about purifying the bloodline and freeing them from the Black Dragon Emperor's rule. The Black and White Dragons fought, and the Black Dragon buried the White Dragon and its lineage, a story passed down from the Black Dragon's perspective. Professor Klein suggests that Mingfei's failure to respond to the Black Dragon Emperor's call is something they've never seen before, necessitating a thorough investigation into Mingfei's bloodline. Professor Guderian questions the importance of identifying Mingfei's bloodline and how they will conduct research on a child, emphasizing that the Dragon Clan has dragon blood running through their veins, with no pure humans among them. Guderian wants to protect Mingfei from becoming a research subject. Professor Klein reminds Guderian that Mingfei was brought here to be a warrior, not just a child. He advises Guderian to file a report and promises that if Mingfei is of the White Dragon lineage, he will be a rare specimen. Professor Guderian reluctantly agrees, saying he doesn't want Mingfei to become a research subject. Professor Klein assures him that they will keep the potential White Dragon lineage a secret until the exam is over. If Mingfei fails the test, they will report him and ensure that those conducting research on him treat him ethically. In the school, the entire security system is shut down, and a data processing operation begins, activating a program called EVA. A mysterious person tells EVA that they want Mingfei to pass the test because there is a great mystery surrounding him that they need time to unravel. The next day, Mingfei is late for the exam and runs to make it on time. When he arrives, he finds Nono standing and takes his seat. He opens the exam paper to find it blank but remembers Finger told him that the exam paper would be blank and that he should fill it with the vision he sees. The students begin listening to recordings of a dragon, and Mingfei recalls Finger telling him that they use 8 audio files in order over the past 8 years, and of course, he had given him hints on what they were. Suddenly, all the students start acting very strangely, and the exam turns into chaos, but there is one girl who remains calmly writing. Outside, a teacher tells someone on the phone to watch for the student who will lose their mind. The teacher tells Nono that she was very calm in her test, and Nono explains that she had experienced spiritual sight before coming here, so she faced no problems. The teacher asks her what she saw in her first sight, and she replies that she saw her mother sleeping in bed when suddenly a shadow approached, stole her soul, and killed her. Returning to the test, Mingfei writes everything Finger told him, but suddenly all the students disappear, and he sees the little boy who always appears to him. The boy asks Mingfei to follow him, and Mingfei sits next to him, asking for his name. The boy says his name is Mingza. The boy says that now Mingfei can see him because he has the ability of spiritual sight. The boy, Mingza, leads Mingfei through strange spaces, and Mingfei asks who Mingza is, but Mingza points to Mingfei's heart and tells him the answer is there. He says that humans are usually stupid, but in Mingfei's case, he is deliberately being dumb. Of course, Mingfei doesn't understand anything and eventually returns to the same place in the school, where he starts crying. Mingfei wakes up to Nono's voice telling him that he fainted during the exam, sleeping for 2 hours of the 3-hour test. She also tells him that he wrote 9 answers, but there were only 8 questions. Despite this, she congratulates him for passing the test, saying his answers were correct even though there were more answers than questions. Finger then gives Mingfei his expert advice on choosing classes and warns him to avoid Professor Lars' class because he is very strict about attendance. However, he also tells him that Professor Lars is currently on a mission outside the school because they found dragon remains and he went to investigate. We then see Professor Lars on a plane over the ocean, with 2 students in the water below searching for the Dragon Palace. They use their ability, which involves a massive snake, to reach the dragon faster. Suddenly, an earthquake occurs, and they lose contact with the plane. Professor Lars blames himself, saying he repeated the same mistake he made 8 years ago. The connection is restored, and the student, I-Ching, reports that he and his partner, Aki, have reached the Dragon Palace. Professor Lars reports to the director, stating that I-Ching has found a bronze dragon palace. The director confirms that it must be the Imperial Bronze Dragon Palace of Norton. Professor Lars insists they must act quickly before they lose the opportunity. He believes from I-Ching's report that the palace is not empty and surely contains something. The director orders the operation to begin and states that if they can't capture what's inside alive, they must eliminate it. Lars asks the director for permission to use the key. Lars approaches a woman with a small child and informs her that the director has permitted them to use the key. The woman tells him to safeguard the key as they currently have no other key except for this child, who carries the pure blood of a dragon. She mentions that even Chu Zihang doesn't have as pure blood as this child. Lars takes the child and advises the woman to spend more time with her daughter. We learn that this woman is Nono's adoptive mother. Lars prepares to dive into the sea with the key, explaining to his assistant that this is the Bronze Dragon Palace, a first-generation dragon and one of the 4 rulers, directly descended from the Black Dragon and known in their records as Norton. He explains that humans once regarded dragons as either gods or demons, while dragons saw humans as mere insects or slaves. For the first time in history, there's a chance for the 2 races to communicate, which would be the most important conversation of the millennium. Lars dives into the water, joins Yixing and Akane, and tells them they have exactly 2 hours to complete the mission. He provides them with new hoses to replace the ones cut by the earthquake. Lars asks them to support him while he performs his Yahenling. Suddenly, a gate appears, and Yixing notes that it is cursed by the fire eaters. Lars explains that they drench their bodies in oil, chew fire, and burn to death, but their bodies do not turn to ash, and their souls remain to protect the place, casting a terrible curse on any intruders. With the key, they bring out the child. The child extends his finger to touch the gate, bleeding and commanding the guardian to open it. The guardian provides the key, which they insert into its eye, opening the gate fully. The child reverts to his normal self and starts crying. Lars switches from professor to caregiver, trying to calm the child. He gives Yixing a chemical bomb, instructing him to use it if they can't capture the being alive and to prioritize their lives and return safely. Lars returns to the ship, monitoring the mission via video. He tells them they don't have much time and their task is to locate the king's bedroom quickly. Norma begins analyzing the palace and searching for the emperor's room, noting that the palace is a labyrinth of bronze tunnels like ant colonies. Lars describes the palace as a massive alchemical machine. Yixing comments that if the palace is this complex, the emperor dragon who built it must have been a skilled machinist. Yixing and Akane find a very tall bronze column, and Yixing asserts that it couldn't have been built by humans. Yixing orders Akane to photograph the column and informs her that he is going to search for his snakes. He warns her not to try to save him if anything happens and to escape immediately, giving her an order as a leader. Lars asks Akane to photograph the column. Akane discovers that the tree around the column has inscriptions in the dragon language, likely written by the emperor dragon himself. Norma joins them, advising Akane to divide the inscriptions into groups and send each group separately. Akane starts photographing but suddenly struggles to breathe and feels dizzy. The team on the plane notices her heart rate increasing, and suddenly, the connection with her is lost. They attempt to pull her up using the rope, only to find it cut. We return to Akane, who is about to lose consciousness and fall, but Yixing catches her. Akane assures him she is fine now and asks if he found anything in the emperor's room. He replies that the bone was too heavy to carry, so he blew it up, and they are now taking a bronze sample for analysis. Yixing spots a small statue and says it's a dragon effigy, which they must take for examination. As Akane moves the statue, the palace begins to shift, and a black shadow suddenly attacks her. She urges Yixing to attack, but the shadow, which is Yixing, asks whom he should attack, revealing that Akane was hallucinating. Yixing tells Akane that the statue had been following her for some time. He fires at it, and Akane realizes she was under its control, experiencing hallucinations. She notices her rope was cut without her noticing and blames herself for not being cautious enough, but Yixing admits his mistake in leaving her alone. Akane notices Yixing carrying something on his back and asks about it. He says his snakes found it and it might be the jar of ashes because it bears the symbol of eternal life. If the dragon is sleeping inside, it means it's still young and they should take it with them. Suddenly, the entire palace begins to move. Yixing says the statue must have triggered this and tells Akane they must escape immediately. They try their best to flee but fail. Yixing states that the palace has awakened and detected them as intruders, hence closing the gate. Back at Castle University, Mingfei wakes up startled by a bell. He is annoyed that someone is ringing it at this hour. Lemingzi appears, explaining it's a morning bell. He takes him to the high bell tower. Lemingzi, scared of heights, speaks cryptically about the difference between the dream world and reality, suggesting that the world Mingfei lives in might be unreal. Lemingzi continues, explaining that the morning bell rings for 2 reasons: when someone dies or is near death, indicating danger and opportunity. He warns Mingfei to prepare for the impending danger. Lemingzi asks Mingfei if he remembers the online game he used to play and asks which skill he would choose if he could have only one. Mingfei replies he would choose the Black Sheep Wall, a skill that allows the player to see the entire map. Lemingzi says Mingfei can now use this skill and advises him to use it wisely as he will need it soon because if everyone is in a maze, a map is essential. Mingfei wakes up to Finger shouting at him to move quickly as the alarm is ringing. He gets dressed and heads out, learning that all students of rank A or higher are to go to the computer center in the library. Mingfei is clueless as he hasn't read the manual. On the way, they meet Nono, who tells Finger he isn't of rank A and should return to his room. She tells Mingfei he is the only student with an S rank in the entire school. When the students arrive at the library, Mingfei regrets not reading the manual. He looks around and sees the girl from his exam, surprised that she is also of rank A. The professors immediately brief them, stating that two of their colleagues are trapped in an underwater palace. They gather to find a way to rescue them, providing all information about the palace and the dragon. They explain that the only way to save them is to solve the palace's mechanism. They show the inscriptions Akane photographed in the dragon language and say they must decipher them to find the exit. Chu Ziheng asks how much time they have, and Guardian says they have exactly 20 minutes. Caesar comments that it usually takes 50 years to translate a single book written in the dragon language, so solving these puzzles now in 20 minutes seems impossible. The professor insists they must try as long as there's a chance, and the school will do everything to save its students. The students log into the system with their cards, and Mingfei mimics them. He notices everyone working quickly, including the new student from his exam, and feels useless. Mingfei recalls Lemingzi telling him to use the Black Sheep Wall spell to access the map, so he decides to try it. Upon entering it into the system, the power suddenly cuts out. It returns to the main screen, and Norma announces that the decryption has been completed from Mingfei's computer. At this moment, Mingfei transforms from a useless student in the back to the one everyone is staring at in amazement. They quickly send the decryption to Yixing, and he and Akane try to escape. Yixing is injured by falling rocks, but Aki helps him to a place without water. Yixing tells the professor to use the key to show them the way. The professor activates the key, revealing the map. The key points directly downward, indicating they should head down and wait for the gate to open. However, the serpent discovers a maze below, and they have only minutes of oxygen left. They need to swim 42 meters down, and the professor is optimistic they can make it with their oxygen supply. Yixing tells the professor he's cutting off communication to conserve energy for the serpents and ends the call. Although they found the path, Aki is still uneasy. The two look at each other, and Yixing asks if she's alright, but she just stares at him silently. She opens her diving mask and tells him they don't have enough oxygen to return. He insists they'll be fine and manage to make it. Aki suggests they stay in place until the water engulfs them, asking him not to say anything since they don't have much time. She tries to confess her feelings for Yixing before they die, but he preempts her, saying he loves her too and won't let her die here. He assures her the exit will open soon, and we see the exit opening, but there's a dragon nearby, indicating they might not make it out. Back on the plane, Professor Lars realizes the dire situation and orders the rescue team to deploy boats and prepare quickly. He explains that the exit is underwater, and although they can swim out with their oxygen supply, they'll be too far from the surface to survive. They'll escape the palace but die as Aki predicted. Back at the university, it's been 10 minutes since they lost contact with the plane, and everyone is worried. One of Lu Mingfei's friends calls him, and Lu explains that two acquaintances are in an accident, and he doesn't know if they're okay. His friend advises him to pray and explains that the universe is full of energy and emotions, and Lu's feelings, though small, might make a difference. This comforts Lu slightly. Meanwhile, the rescue team searches for 14 minutes but finds no trace of Aki or Yixing. They're about to withdraw when one boat reports a sighting. They find Aki, who surfaces and hands over the bronze urn, warning them to leave quickly as there's a creature nearby. Suddenly, Aki is pulled under, and her blood stains the water. Lars breaks down, crying over Yixing and Aki, blaming himself for failing to protect them and asking for their forgiveness. He looks up to see the dragon approaching the plane at high speed. They prepare to attack with chemical weapons. Lars, shocked by the dragon's presence despite their thorough reconnaissance, takes a chemical rifle and fires, but the dragon is unfazed. The dragon eats the plane searching for Yixing and Aki, and Lars's assistant fears they'll be next, calling it a monster. Lars insists it's an intelligent being. They have chemical bombs on the plane and plan to lure the dragon to them and detonate. When the dragon swallows the bombs, the signal is lost, but they regain control and detonate. Thinking they've killed the dragon, Lars's assistant expresses sorrow for losing Aki and Yixing. Suddenly, the dragon attacks and kills her, revealing it survived the explosion. The dragon circles them rapidly. They realize there's still a bomb inside the dragon and suggest detonating it to buy time to escape. Lars orders the pilot to head straight towards a dam, but the pilot warns of a collision. Lars insists, and they head for the dam with the dragon in pursuit. They use the key to open the dam gate and pass through, followed closely by the dragon. Lars orders the bomb detonation inside the dragon and quickly closes the gate. The explosion kills the dragon, but a Fong fragment lodges in Lars's chest, sealing his fate. Back at the school, the principal announces the mission's success, securing an important dragon artifact, and thanks Lu Mingfei for solving the palace riddle. As students leave, Zhu Jiang offers Lu the presidency of Leonhardt after him. Lu, feeling overwhelmed, declines, thinking the role is too big for him. Zhu Jiang assures Lu of his strength and respect, whether as a friend or foe, hinting that Caesar might make the same offer. The bell tolls, signaling a warrior's death, and the students stand in solemn respect for the fallen. The principal visits Lars, who is dying from the dragon venom in his chest, not just the Fong wound. He gives his final report, stating the dragon they killed was an important assistant to the Dragon Emperor. They retrieved the bronze urn but are unsure of its contents. The principal reveals it contains either a cocoon, dragon bones, or an egg. Lars advises the principal not to tell students he and his colleagues died but that they went on other missions. He suggests Nono choose another mentor and finally passes away, joining his students. Mingfei receives an email from Nono inviting him to a party at the Amber Building and telling him that Caesar also wants to meet and talk with him. Finger tells Mingfei that Caesar also wants to recruit him to the student council and that he can consider this a direct invitation from Caesar. He says that being an S rank has earned him special treatment. Mingfei asks Finger what he knows about Caesar, so Finger tells him everything about Caesar's background. He explains that Caesar's family is one of the most famous dragon-slaying families in the West, and they have many businesses and are very wealthy. He says that Caesar will be the head of the family in the future and will be the Emperor of Shadows in the Western world. Mingfei responds that Caesar seems like an important man, but Finger continues, saying that every student in the school knows the first sentence Caesar said when he first came to the school: "Come fight me if you're ready to lose." Mingfei changes his mind and says Caesar seems like a thug, and Finger wholeheartedly agrees. Mingfei falls into meaningful silence, so Finger asks him what's wrong. He replies that he's thinking about what he first said when he came to the school. He recalls how he was amazed by the grand and ancient university buildings, and with the wind blowing his hair, he said, "The cafeteria food must be delicious." Mingfei says he will decline the invitation and not go, but Finger insists he should, especially since there will be an open buffet. However, Mingfei says he doesn't have a suit to wear, but Finger suggests he borrow one from the university theater. Despite this, Mingfei still isn't very enthusiastic about going. At night, even though the invitation was for Mingfei, the open buffet personally invites Finger, and the two go together. At the party, Mingfei notices that everyone looks wealthy, and he feels like a commoner who was only invited because they thought he couldn't afford food. Finger explains to him that Caesar is showing off how powerful and wealthy he is so that when he offers Mingfei to join them, he will accept. Then, a car arrives, and red roses are laid out, so Finger says that the roses must be for Mingfei. Then Nono arrives too, and she tells them to go inside quickly before their suits get wet from the rain, and they end up paying for dry cleaning. Caesar calls Nono, standing at the end of the rose path, and we discover that Caesar laid it out for Nono. Mingfei and Finger enter the party, which is very elegant and classical, making Mingfei feel like he has traveled back in time. Then Caesar and Nono enter the party, and Caesar welcomes the guests and asks them to congratulate Nono on her birthday, surprising her as she realizes the party is in her honor. Afterward, the party begins, and Finger finds it difficult to be at such a high-class party without causing some mischief, so he pulls Mingfei and they start doing acrobatic stunts under the guise of dancing. Nono then tells Caesar that he needs to go and save Mingfei from Finger before he ends up leaving the entire party to join the Leonhardt Society. But Caesar responds that he knows that Chu Ziheng tried to recruit him to the Leonhardt Society and that everyone expects him to offer him to join the student council, but he doesn't like doing what's expected of him, so he won't offer it. Nono tells him that all his strength comes from his big family and that he should be grateful to them, but Caesar replies that his strength is his own and that he doesn't rely on his family's name. Caesar steps forward, and with a single clap, the whole party stops, and he begins to speak to them. He says that on his first day at the school, he was greatly disappointed because he discovered that there are too many students. He says that if these students are the elite, shouldn't their numbers be fewer? He asks them why they joined Castle University, whether to learn the truth of the world or to secure important positions. He says that these are not the real reasons, and they are here to fight. Only the talented can stand in the battlefield and protect their comrades, and only then will they die with honor. He asks them whose orders should they follow, and his speech is so powerful that the attendees begin chanting his name. But Caesar says they won't follow his orders alone but the orders of the elite, and he says the elite are the true madmen of the world, and everyone starts clapping for him. Then Caesar calls Mingfei to the stage and asks him to come and stand by his side, but Mingfei hesitates. So, with complete arrogance and confidence, Caesar tells him if he wants to refuse, he should leave immediately. But Mingfei says he needs time to think, so Caesar tells him that by the time the next dance ends, he must give his answer. Caesar gestures for the party to continue and goes back to Nono, who tells him she wants to leave because she's tired. He tells her to take a car because it's cold outside. The blonde girl who took the test with Mingfei is also at the party, but she is playing with the musical band. When she sees all this happening, she leaves them, approaches Mingfei, and asks him to dance. After they finish, she introduces herself as Rain and bows to him like he's a king before walking away. Mingfei then sees Nono leaving and tells himself that this place isn't for him and that he doesn't feel comfortable, so he'll just wish Nono a happy birthday and leave. He runs after Nono and finds her in the car, signaling him to come over. He goes to her and wishes her a happy birthday. Nono asks him to drive her car to the top of the hill because she wants to take a walk. Meanwhile, Nono warns Caesar, telling him that a dragon is attacking the campus, and they activate the university's defense system, closing all entrances and exits, activating anti-aircraft alchemy weapons and space defense systems, and closing the main gate. A strange group attacks the campus on motorcycles, and the administration isn't sure how they even got into the university in the first place, but Norma says there are 13 intruders. The 13 intruders split up after entering the campus, so Gudrian asks why she announced that a dragon was attacking. Professor Klein answers, saying that the director brought the copper jar to the university, and that might be the reason. Professor Klein asks Norma about the jar's location, and she says it's in the research center. He asks about the number of guards at the institution, and she says that the elite forces are out of the country, so the elite students will be the ones defending the building. She tells him that Caesar and his group will defend Valhalla, and Chu Zihang will defend the library with the Leonhardt Society. All the students start arming themselves and preparing for battle. On the hill, Mingfei is driving the car with Nono, but suddenly Mingzi appears and starts teasing him, saying that Mingfei must love Nono, which is why he came here with her. Mingzi says that Nono has never loved anyone before, and even when Yixing and Aki were gone, she never showed any sadness. Then Mingzi disappears, and the two reach the top of the hill. Back on campus, Caesar sends a message to Nono, warning her about the situation at the university. The students capture 7 out of the 13 intruders, who are of different nationalities, making it hard to determine where they're from. Norma says none of them have met the person who hired them. The priority now is to find the remaining 6 intruders. They ask Professor Klein to use his snakes to find them, but Klein says the law suppresses everyone's powers and will prevent him from using his Yahello. The administration gives Professor Klein orders to tell the Night Watcher to stop the law so they can find the remaining 6. They call the Night Watcher and update him on the latest developments, saying they need to stop the law so they can use Yahello to find the intruders. He says the Emperor Dragons are about to awaken, and the students need a chance to train because what's coming is huge. The Night Watcher releases the law, allowing teachers and students to use their Yenling freely. Then, we move to the mountain where Nono and Mingfei are. They dip their feet in the lake to watch the stars. The water is freezing, but neither of them admits it to save face. Mingfei starts a romantic conversation about the stars and the lake. He cleverly asks if she was close to Aki and Yixing, who died in the last mission. She replies that not only they died, but Lars as well. She explains that Lars was a professor at the university and her mentor. Nono says they announced he was on a mission, but in reality, he died. He told her that if they announced continuous missions without his return, it meant he was dead. This was his message to her. Mingfei asks if she's upset, but Nono says she's not sad at all. She tells him that if she died, he should tell people she was sent to a distant base. This way, the ones she wanted to understand would know she was dead. She says things would still be happy even if they didn't understand her message and forgot her. Mingfei asks why no one here fears death, neither students nor teachers. Nono says she has no idea. She mentions that some people graduate from the school, erase dragons from their minds, and live as if they never knew about them. If someone chooses to stay here, they must have a reason worth dying for, so they don't fear death. Mingfei asks her about her reason, and she says she simply doesn't want to go home. She suggests changing the subject from death and talking about stars, but the conversation circles back to death. Back at the school, the law is suspended, and everyone starts using Yenling freely, invaders, students, and teachers. As soon as the law is suspended, the invaders use a Yenling called Hell's Light. This provides them cover to move freely but has a range of only 2 meters, so they must stay close. Their target is Valhalla building. Professor Klein releases his snakes throughout the school to search for the invaders. There are bounty hunters among the invaders. They say they succeeded in infiltrating thanks to the agent and receive orders to go to the wine cellar. There, they must find an underground path and follow it. The bounty hunter sneaks quickly towards the wine cellar. He finds a chimney to enter the building. The chimney hasn't been used for a long time, so he deduces the alcohol there is just decoration, or no one at the school drinks. He reaches a door leading to an underground path. The agent on the phone instructs him to use the black card she gave him to pass through. He opens the door. We switch to Caesar, who uses his Yenling and easily finds the invaders in his area. He calls Chu Zihang to ask if the guests appeared there too. Chu Zihang confirms, and Caesar asks if he wants to bet on who finishes the fight first. Chu Zihang waits calmly in the library for the invaders. His assistant asks if he's okay. We don't know why, but Chu reassures her. Leonhardt Society receives an order from Norma to evacuate the library immediately, except for Chu Zihang. The assistant asks if she shouldn't leave too. Chu Zihang explains that using his Yenling around them would harm them first. He asks her to take the students far from the library. The assistant bids farewell to Chu Zihang. He tells her he wants to go out with her after this is over, but she warns him not to smile in such a situation because it means he will die, like in the movies. The invaders enter Valhalla under Hell's Light, thinking no one can see them. Their leader looks at Aki's picture and calls her stupid. One of the invaders asks if she's sure no one sees them, especially since Caesar is looking at them and laughing. Before the leader can confirm, her phone rings loudly and students start shooting at them. Caesar mocks, saying it's beautiful music. Just as the shooting begins, Caesar raises his hand, and everyone stops firing. The leader asks Caesar's permission to answer her phone, gets annoyed at the caller for interrupting during a fight, then throws the phone away, saying she hates promotional calls. Caesar responds that sales calls are the worst kind. She comments that she heard Caesar is a rich, arrogant kid but finds him not too bad. Caesar asks her name. She introduces herself as Sakatoku-mai and jokes that she will tell him her name but never her phone number. When Caesar hears her name, it sounds familiar. She explains that she is the elder sister of Sakatoku-mai. Caesar apologizes for informing her that she died, but Mai says they weren't close since they weren't raised together, so it doesn't matter to her. She adds that her sister lived and died as a puppet, following orders. Mai plays a song and tells Caesar they will start fighting when the song ends. Caesar asks why they invaded the university. Mai says they came for the jar. Caesar warns that Dragon Bone brings disasters, but she responds that it also brings a new era, greater than Caesar can imagine. Everyone is on edge, waiting for the attack as the song ends. Caesar counts down silently from 15 to 1. At 11, the song ends abruptly, and the invaders fry the students like potatoes. Caesar survives and tells Mai she uses rubber bullets because she doesn't want to cause many deaths. As he deduces things about them, Mai also figures out his Yenling is called Kamaitashi, which is invincible in the dark. Caesar tells her she talks too much instead of searching for the jar. Mai says her mission is to delay him and that the jar retrieval is the masked girl's task. Chu Zihong hears everything happening with Caesar since Caesar left the line open. Caesar continues talking to Mai, saying she changed the song's ending to win. Mai says the real fight hasn't started yet and offers a unique apology by fighting him in the dark where he's strongest. They start fighting. Caesar says no one escapes his Kamaitashi and she won't be an exception, but surprisingly, he can't hit her. We switch to Chu Zihong waiting for the masked girl. She knocks first, then enters with long blonde hair and a mask. She tells him he must have wanted no one to see his eyes, hence asking his teammates to leave the library. Chu Zihong says he has secrets to protect. The masked girl says she was warned to be cautious around him because he's a monster. Teachers in the control room watch Chu Zihong and are shocked when the girl arrives without any weapon. One teacher suggests her Yenling might be powerful enough not to need one. Professor Guderian asks about Chu Zihong's Yenling. The professor replies that only the director and his mentor have seen it, and no one else is allowed to know. Guderian asks if it's that dangerous, but the professor doesn't answer and orders Chu Zihong to finish her quickly. Chu Zihong's Yenling is revealed to be Sovereign Flame. Guderian is shocked, saying it's rare and extremely dangerous, causing everything around to explode and turn to ashes in seconds. He understands why they kept Chu Zihong's Yenling secret. It turns out the masked girl also uses Sovereign Flame, shocking all the teachers who start questioning her identity. We switch to the bounty hunter reaching Eva's room. Eva asks who he is since he has access but is unfamiliar to her. She warns him to leave immediately or the consequences will be dire. The bounty hunter refuses, saying he likes to gamble to enjoy, and asks her for directions to Skuld area. Eva tells him the way in great detail, as if he's not an enemy, and the bounty hunter thanks her and continues. The agent on the phone tells him he's close to Skuld area, where he will find most of the school's secrets, and raises his reward to 5 million. Blinded by the 5 million, the bounty hunter loses focus, falls into the water with his phone before hearing the final order. He swims, saying he will discover it himself. He reaches an underwater door, feeling terrible about what's behind it. He opens it. We return to Nono and Mingfei swimming in watermelon water, where Nono tries to convince Mingfei to join the student union. When Nuno directly asks him to join the student union, he thinks it's a conspiracy by Caesar and Nuno, and that Caesar sent her to influence him and get him to join them. He tells himself he won't fall for the trap, but Nuno clarifies and says Caesar has nothing to do with what she's asking, and that she wants him to join. He asks her what she means. Nuno says she wants someone to take orders from her. He tells her she can give orders to anyone there, but she says she doesn't want to give orders to people who follow Caesar. She adds that they're engaged, but it was a decision made by both of them. However, Nuno isn't happy with this because she wants to be independent and not derive her strength from Caesar. From her words, he realizes that she's engaged to Caesar. Nuno continues, saying it's best for him to join either Leonhardt or the student union. She insists he joins the student union, promising that while she'll give him orders, she'll also protect him. But he tells her she didn't help him escape from Finger at the party when he was being forced to dance. She remembers she was going to help but Caesar stopped her, saying he could handle it himself. She tries to convince him further, promising she'll help him when he needs her and won't leave him. He sets off fireworks for Nuno as a birthday gift with Lu Mingzi's help. Nuno is very happy with the gift but doesn't know it's from him. She says she's happy with it regardless of who did it and then starts crying because she wishes her mother would get her a gift and care for her. After that, he decides to join the union and lets Nuno give him orders as she pleases. Nuno promises to protect him in return. We return to the hunter, who opens the door and gets swept away by the water current coming out, landing on the roof in a room resembling an aquarium. There, he encounters a shark, but it avoids him, and he manages to escape. He keeps searching for the lab with the jar and eventually finds an elevator labeled, "The Way to the Lab." He pulls out the card the agent gave him and passes through the door. We switch to the director, who is in the same place as the specimen. He says the research so far hasn't been very useful because there were no dragon samples, but now history will change, and they'll start a new era. The hunter watches as the director gives his grand speech, realizing the jar must be what his client wants. The researchers ask the director if they'll be allowed to dissect the dragon and if the jar's contents are even alive. The director says he doesn't know and that the jar was made in 33 AD by a disguised Norton. The researchers ask the director to dissect it as soon as possible, and the head researcher asks if there's a guarantee the jar's contents won't wake up. The director responds that it's safe, the creature inside is asleep and hasn't awakened, and that the conditions they're keeping the jar in, like nitrogen and magnets, will keep the dragon inside in a deep slumber. The director adds that the jar is made of a regenerative metal, making it so sturdy that even the dragon emperor himself would struggle to open it. However, one of the researchers points out there's an opening in the jar. The director says it's a hole made by Lars with a chemical substance to threaten the dragon and make it chase them. The director asks Norma to show the scan results, and when she does, they see the egg inside the jar is split in half, with one part empty. The director thinks to himself that something must have come out of the jar's opening. The head researcher wants to dissect the jar immediately, but the director threatens him with a knife, telling him and the researchers to leave quickly, warning that no one knows the consequences of awakening the dragon in the school and that at the very least, the school would be destroyed. Once the head researcher leaves the room, the hunter sees this as his chance to enter and steal the jar. Suddenly, he has a vision of someone calling him brother. He dismisses it as a hallucination caused by the moon and starts by photographing the jar. The hallucinations return. He drops the tube the agent gave him but ignores it, the 5 million, and the entire mission, fleeing the scene. We then see his mobile in the water, and it becomes clear his final mission was to melt the metal with the substance given to him by the agent and retrieve what's inside the jar. Someone else, a stranger, enters the jar room, calling the hunter a coward for not completing the mission. This person takes the chemical substance, familiar with Norma, and tells her to be quiet. He approaches the jar, breaks the glass around it, melts the metal, adds a few drops of his blood, and offers his entire body to the Black Dragon Emperor Nidhogg. We return to Caesar, who is still fighting Mai. Caesar tells Mai that her quick movements and the sound of her hairpin make tracking her nearly impossible. He suggests they race to see who wins 2 out of 3 rounds. Caesar's ability to detect even the faintest sounds, as it is made from the wind spirit, allows him to block Mai's first attack. However, Mai's skills make dealing with her increasingly difficult. They start the second round, with Mai creating more surrounding sounds to distract him. Once again, he avoids her. The third round is much harder, with sounds around Caesar everywhere, making it difficult to pinpoint her location. Eventually, he focuses and blocks her for the 3rd time. Suddenly, an explosion occurs while they're fighting. They call a truce, declaring a draw. To investigate the cause of the explosion, Mai asks Caesar to turn on the lights, but Norma doesn't respond when Caesar asks her. He realizes there's a major malfunction in the school. They start searching together for the explosion's cause, finding footprints of someone about 160 centimeters tall. They discover a hole in the wall, and Mai says that to make such a hole, the person must have used something with a temperature comparable to the sun's heat. Caesar asks Mai if she's sure it wasn't someone from her group, and Mai confirms it wasn't. They discover the intruder came from the elevator and Mai asks what's below. Caesar tells her it's the university's lab. Caesar says the person who broke into the lab must have had no heartbeat because he didn't hear any sound, even though he was using his yailing while fighting her. Nono and Mingfei return to school, and on the way, Nono opens her phone and hears Caesar's message about the attack on campus. She tells Mingfei not to worry because they're used to this kind of attack, and that Chu Zihang and Caesar are there, so by the time they arrive, everything will likely be over. We return to campus, where Chu Zihang is still fighting the masked girl, but they're evenly matched and he can't defeat her. The teachers note that her mastery of the sovereign flame is greater than Chu Zihang's, and they say her main goal is to delay and distract him, which is why she's not trying to take him down despite being stronger. Professor Guderian notices the intruder hunter trying to escape, so he alerts the students to shoot at him, but the hunter manages to escape and reaches the gate, only for Mingfei to accidentally hit him with the car. Mingfei gets out to see the damage but finds that the person he hit is his old friend, Lao Tang. Quickly, they understand the situation. Mingfei is a student at Castle University, and Lao Tang is an intruder wanted by the school. They get back into the car in a very awkward situation, with Lao Tang holding a knife to Mingfei's neck, pretending he's a hostage. Lao Tang tells Mingfei to scream a bit to make the act convincing, and Mingfei starts acting like a hostage very convincingly. Lao Tang tells Mingfei to drive the car up the mountain. Suddenly, all the students start looking behind the car in fear. Mingfei, Lao Tang, and Nono feel an intense heat coming from behind them, and the 3 are too scared to turn around and look. Nono suggests they look in the mirror. When the 3 look in the mirror, they see a fireball with a child inside moving toward them, the child running and calling out, "Brother, brother." Mingfei and Lao Tang think it's a ghost, and instead of escaping out of the school, they drive further into the school, with the child following them, still calling out, "Brother, brother." We then cut to the professors, who are shocked by the disaster that's appeared. They deduce that the heat can only come from a dragon. The dragon starts using its Yenling, which is the sovereign flame, prompting the professor to order all the students to get down quickly. A massive explosion occurs at the university. We return to Chu Zihang, who is still fighting the masked girl. When the explosion happens, they stop fighting, and Chu Zihang asks if the intruders are responsible for the explosion. The masked girl denies responsibility for the explosion. Chu Zihang believes her, surprising the girl, who wonders why he believes her so quickly. Chu Zihang says she's not the type to lie, and the girl leaves him. Professor Klein calls the night watchman and asks him to enact the law again to prevent the dragon from using Yanling. But the night watchman says that even if the law is enacted, the dragon can still use Yanling because of its high blood purity, suggesting that this dragon is likely of the first bloodline, meaning it's one of the 4 sovereign dragons of bronze and fire. We go to Caesar and Mai. Mai keeps trying to call the person who provides them with information, who is also her friend. When the friend answers, Mai tells her that a disaster has occurred at the school. The friend explains that there's a child emitting flames everywhere, resembling a burning sun walking on the ground. She panics and says they were supposed to put the substance on the jar, not wake it up. Caesar takes the phone from Mai and explains the situation to the friend. Then he gives the phone back to Mai, who asks what they should do. The friend panics and says to take a video of the situation. When she sees the video, she realizes that it's not Norton but Constantine, and that his power is unstable because he was forced to awaken. She warns that Constantine could explode at any moment, and if he does, he'll destroy everything around him. Then she runs to find a solution, and Mai says she'll call her back soon. Constantine continues walking through the campus amidst gunfire, calling out for his brother. No, Lao Tang, and Mingfei hide, with the dragon searching for them. Mingfei asks Lao Tang what kind of job makes him break into Castle University, and Lao Tang explains that he's a hunter and that his mission is to hunt mythical creatures. Mingfei is amazed by Lao Tang, almost seeing him as a superhero. Lao Tang explains that someone hired him to infiltrate the school and steal the jar, showing Mingfei pictures of it. Mingfei scolds him for breaking the jar, saying it released the dragon, but Lao Tang says he found it already broken. Mingfei says they should escape quickly before the dragon finds them, and Nono notes that dragon senses are much better than human senses. However, this dragon seems off because it's close but hasn't noticed them despite following them. Nono suspects it's looking for one of them specifically. At that moment, Finger suddenly appears and says they need to escape, but Lao Tang warns that it's dangerous because of the gunfire everywhere. When Mingfei realizes that Finger is there, he screams loudly. The dragon notices them and heads in their direction. Mingfei thinks to himself how unfortunate it is that useless senpai showed up instead of Caesar or Chu Zihang. The useless senpai says that since the dragon uses fire, the best thing to do is to go somewhere with water. Nono suggests they head to the university pool. The 4 of them run to the pool, and along the way, they meet Caesar and Mai. Caesar tells Nono to go with them to the pool, but Nono wants to help him fight. Caesar tells her that her presence will make him worried and unable to fight well, and he also tells her to protect Mingfei, as the dragon is likely following him. So, Nono goes to the pool with Mingfei, Finger, and Lao Tang. Caesar asks Mai if she's going to run, but Mai says she's the leader and won't abandon the battlefield. Mai's friend calls back and says the best way to fight the dragon is to use rubber bullets instead of metal because the dragon can control metal. She explains that while the rubber will melt and the tranquilizer will evaporate, its effect will still hit the dragon, and at least they'll be able to drive it out of the school. Mai tells Caesar they'll use rubber bullets, and Caesar passes the orders to the professors, who relay them to the students. The dragon begins to retreat after Mai and Caesar shoot it with rubber bullets, and then all the students start firing. We return to the 3 who are swimming in the watermelon water. Lao Tang, Finger, and Mingfei, playing in the water and introducing each other. Suddenly, Lao Tang gets a vision of Constantine calling him a brother, and he tells the other 2 that he feels the dragon is chasing him specifically. The dragon enters the pool, and the 3 decide to hold their breath and go underwater. When Mingfei goes underwater, he finds himself in a strange place full of steam and rocks. He thinks it's one of the dreams Mingzi shows him and calls out for Mingzi, but Mingzi doesn't appear. He sees someone walking from a distance and approaches to ask where he is, only to find Constantine calling him brother. Mingfei asked Constantine why he was calling him brother, and said he didn't know him at all. Constantine approached him and started sniffing him, then Mingfei looked up the mountain and saw the bronze dragon's palace, the one they were supposed to solve the puzzle of. So, he realized the boy was the dragon. Mingfei got scared and backed away. Mingzi appeared and kicked the dragon in the stomach, telling him to stay away from his brother. Mingzi grabbed Mingfei's hand and brought him back to reality. When Mingfei returned to reality, he found himself still in the pool, but Lao Tang and Finger were missing, and he was surrounded by the footprints of the Emperor Dragon, Constantine. He realized what he had seen was real. Then, Director Anju appeared and told Mingfei he had been looking for him urgently and that he needed to come with him. The director told Mingfei that this might be their first meeting, but he knew everything about him. He took him to a tall tower in the university. Mingfei asked why they were there, and the director explained that everyone capable of fighting was in the battle below. He also said that thanks to them, the dragon couldn't move. He pulled out a bullet made of the Philosopher's Stone and said it could kill an imperial dragon. He handed it to Mingfei and told him he would be the one to kill it. Mingfei protested that he was too weak to do something like that. The director told him to have more confidence in himself, reminding him that he had fired at Caesar and Zhou Zihang on his first day at the school. Mingfei thought to himself that he had intended to apologize to them for his reckless behavior. The director explained Mingfei's mission. There was a third eye on the dragon's forehead, which was its weak point. He said Mingfei's task was simply to shoot the bullet into that eye when the director gave the signal. Mingfei asked why it had to be him. The director said he was the only one who would be able to move when he activated his Yanling at the critical moment and told him again to trust in his abilities and that he was more talented than he realized. Meanwhile, Lao Tang and Finger had fled when they saw the dragon in the pool, leaving Mingfei behind. Lao Tang kept hearing the dragon calling out to him. The dragon continued calling until it lost control and transformed from its human form into a dragon, still calling for its brother. This was the first time Mingfei had seen a dragon, and he was shocked by its appearance. The director appeared on the battlefield, telling the dragon that its time had come. He began his attack, and Mingfei prepared to fire. The director flew and activated his Yanling, slowing down time. He attacked the dragon, opening the eye on its forehead, and gave Mingfei the signal to shoot quickly. Mingfei was extremely nervous, but Mingzi was with him, assuring him and telling him to shoot. Mingfei fired the bullet, hitting the dragon in the eye, causing it to lose its ability to control metal. The director then ordered the students to fire metal bullets at the dragon. Finger shouted at Lao Tang to run because he was too close to the dragon, and the live bullets could hit him. But Lao Tang stood still, looking at the dragon for a moment before running away. The dragon flew and stood in front of Lao Tang. The shooting continued, and the dragon was severely affected but remained standing with its wings spread, protecting Lao Tang. Its flesh fell off, and its blood drained completely. It reached out to Lao Tang, telling him to run away. Lao Tang kept shouting that he wasn't his brother and didn't know him at all, then ran away, screaming that he wasn't his brother. The students continued shooting at the dragon until nothing was left of it. The last words of Constantine were, "Never return to this world," before he completely vanished. The director observed everything that had happened and saw Lao Tang fleeing the university. Lao Tang ran through the forest in complete shock, recalling memories with Constantine where they discussed how they would die and return to life. It became clear that Constantine deeply trusted and loved his brother, telling him he never felt any fear with him. He remembered their time together and the thousands of years they had spent with each other, completely breaking down until he realized he was indeed Constantine's older brother, Norton, and that he needed to avenge his brother. He stood up, and dragon flames erupted from him. Back at the school, they realized Norton had unleashed his dragon flames in anger. Night Watcher told the director that the four rulers were brothers, and the intruder hunter was actually the Imperial Dragon Norton who had escaped from the vessel 80 years ago. He asked if the director intended to kill Constantine in front of his brother's eyes, knowing the dragon would surely wake up furious and come to seek revenge, causing catastrophic destruction. The director replied that he wanted to end this dragon war before he died because he didn't have much time left and was tired of his life and being a dragon slayer, as everyone he had known had died and he was the only one left alive. Night Watcher told him they needed him because no one else could take his place. The director said the next headmaster of the school was already chosen. Night Watcher asked if he meant Mingfei, and the director said he saw potential in him and believed he could be the blade that would end the dragons. The director continued, saying his current goal was to kill the 4 imperial dragons before he died. He explained that the reason dragons didn't die and returned to life after being killed was that they separated a part of their bodies and sealed it in a jar, which contained all their genes and memories. Even if they were killed, they would come back to life because they had a part of their body sealed. He said if they wanted to eliminate the imperial dragons completely, they had to kill them before they sealed the jar. Night Watcher asked the director why he didn't kill Norton before he fully awakened as a dragon. The director replied that he wanted to take his bone to conduct research on it because the bone they had wouldn't be enough. Then the director called Caesar to begin the plan to hunt the Imperial Dragon Norton. The next day, Mingfei was in his room, worried about Lao Tang and trying to call him, but Lao Tang didn't answer. Finger was practicing his favorite hobby of spreading news and said that after the battle ended, many planes came to the school, and the secret party members who arrived went straight to Valhalla for a meeting that hadn't ended yet. Mingfei asked Finger about the secret party. Finger explained that they were a large group of businessmen who kept their identities hidden. In the past, they were said to be knights, kings, and merchants, but they were actually dragon slayers. Finger added that the school was now full of dragon slayers after the incident, making it safer than ever. Finger asked Mingfei if he had decided which group to join. Mingfei said he had decided to join the Union. Finger was surprised at how quickly he made his decision, but Mingfei said he chose it because Nono promised to protect him. Finger welcomed Mingfei to the Union, surprising him to learn Finger was a member. Finger explained that he always joined the place with the most benefits. Then there was a knock on the door. Someone came to give Mingfei his Union card and told him Caesar requested him to come to the Ember building quickly for an important meeting. Mingfei asked if it was something urgent, but the person said he didn't know, only that Caesar was having tea with the director, which likely meant it was something important. We cut to the director and Caesar, with the director saying there was no longer any doubt that the underwater palace was built by the bronze dragon Norton and that they needed to conduct a quick investigation. They needed to go on another scouting mission to the palace before the crack caused by the earthquake closed. The director said that although the Lionheart Society performed well in yesterday's battle, he wanted the student union to handle this mission and insisted that Mingfei be part of the team. Mingfei goes to Caesar's office, and Caesar, full of arrogance, welcomes him to the bronze mission. Without any introductions, Caesar dives right into it, telling Mingfei that he will train for 2 months and then head to Qin to carry out the mission. At this point, Mingfei loses his calm and nearly his mind, screaming that he isn't bragging, but his main talent is ruining everything. Caesar continues as if he didn't hear or see his panic about the mission, saying that if Mingfei didn't know how to dive, then Nono would be responsible for his training. But Mingfei keeps saying that he is still a beginner and that they surely need a professional for such an important mission. He insists that he has no talent or skills and can only guarantee that he will 100% hinder the mission. Caesar, still calmly playing with his knife, says that Mingfei proved yesterday in battle that he is elite, and his pure blood will make up for his lack of experience, so there's no need to worry. Mingfei then pleads with Caesar to just look at his legs shaking out of fear just from talking about the mission, but Caesar ignores him once again, saying it's natural for someone with an S rank to take on dangerous missions, right? He then adds that they have a shortage of people who can go on missions these days, which is why they need him. Mingfei, in a split second, does some quick calculations and says that there are 360 students in the first year alone. If they hire 300 dragon killers every year, that would mean about 6,000 over the last 20 years, with at least 200 of them being S rank. So, there's no way they have a shortage. Caesar continues, saying that aside from everything else, it's an honor for Mingfei, especially since only 2 students from the first year were chosen. Mingfei gets upset, saying they should ask for their opinion before dragging them into such a dangerous mission. Caesar, still calm and smug, tells him if that's what he wants, then fine, and asks, Mr. Mingfei, I'm offering you the honor of joining the bronze mission. What do you say? Mingfei screams at the top of his lungs that he absolutely refuses, to which Caesar replies that he's sorry, but the decision isn't in his hands. The director himself chose Mingfei, and the assistant also steps in to encourage Mingfei to accept, telling him that the other first-year student agreed and that he shouldn't forget that he is in S rank, so he will be fine and there's no need to worry. Mingfei gets angry and says that no one in their right mind would agree to such a thing, and they don't need to lie to him. But then Ren enters the room, saying that she did agree to join the mission, and that she usually takes on more missions than the other students. Mingfei tries to reason with her, saying that she might die on this mission, but Ren replies that they are there to save humanity, and she is fully aware of the risks. Mingfei retorts that unlike her, he came here for the free education and says that if they want to save humanity, they should go ahead and do it, but leave him out of it. Caesar, visibly annoyed for the first time during the entire meeting, tells Mingfei that what he is doing is disappointing and that he had high hopes for him, especially since he's the genius with the S rank. Caesar then sarcastically repeats what Mingfei said earlier about coming here for free education and wanting a normal life, telling him that if he wants to do those things, he should leave the school immediately, erase his memory, and maybe even ask them to make up a story about his time there, and go back to his normal life. Caesar then coldly dismisses Mingfei, telling him to leave his ID card before he goes. Mingfei takes out his ID card and is about to hand it over, but Nono intervenes, saying that Caesar is being too hard on Mingfei and that he is overwhelming him with this whole saving humanity thing. Nono gives Caesar a lesson on ethics, telling him to stop looking down on Mingfei just because he doesn't act like the elite. Nono looks at Mingfei and tells him to decide what he wants to do. Mingfei calms down and tells them that it's not that he doesn't want to go, but that he's afraid he'll get in their way. He tells Caesar not to come and be mad at him later. Caesar smiles and welcomes him to the mission, saying he has high hopes for him. Mingfei begins a rigorous training regimen with almost everyone being passed around like a soccer ball. He trains in running, and Caesar trains him in knife use, where Mingfei's performance is disastrous. Chu Zihang trains him in boxing, where Mingfei is equally terrible and also quite dumb. Nono starts teaching him diving, and Ren teaches him shooting. To his credit, Mingfei puts in a lot of effort, training hard everywhere and anytime. After 2 months, the time for the mission finally arrives. On the day of the mission, Mingfei wears his diving suit and stands in front of the mirror for a full 15 minutes. Finger asks if he plans to spend the entire day in front of the mirror. Mingfei says he's just contemplating his ridiculous appearance and begins to curse the mission and himself for agreeing to go. Mingfei asks Finger why he stays despite failing for 4 years. Finger says that if he leaves, he would be very lonely. Just as he seems to be sympathizing with Mingfei and the viewers, Finger adds that the most important reason is that the food in the school's cafeteria is delicious. Mingfei is shocked that Finger stays at the school for the food and yells that he could simply go on a mission and die like Aki and Yi Cheng, and the food wouldn't matter then. Finger lightly slaps Mingfei to make him stop shouting and tells him that he's afraid of dying. Mingfei admits that he's scared and that he doesn't even have any Yenling to protect him. Finger tries to comfort and motivate him, spouting nonsense in all directions, saying that they are both failures, and failures need to stick together to survive. Mingfei throws his money card to Finger and tells him that if he dies, he can use it as much as he wants and buy whatever he desires until the administration notices and deactivates it. Before Mingfei even moves, Finger makes a call and orders the most expensive items from the restaurant. Mingfei yells that he said to use it when he's dead, not now, to which Finger replies that there's a chance he might die. Mingfei screams back that there's also a chance he might live. Finger tosses the card back to Mingfei, telling him that he's right. He should focus on his chances of survival and not assume he's going to die. He reassures him, saying that failures always have good luck. At the ocean, the dragon that was in Norton's palace welcomes its master, who has returned after 2,000 years. Norton thanks the dragon for guarding the palace all this time and returns to the palace. On the Mania ship, Professor Klein announces the start of the Bronze mission. The students on the mission are Nono, Caesar, Ren, and Mingfei. Professor Klein tells them that from now on, they will be treated as professional dragon killers, not students. Mingfei is surprised that Chu Zihong isn't with them on the mission, wondering why they left someone important and strong like him behind and brought him instead. Professor Klein reassures them that they are well prepared in case the guardian dragon attacks them like last time, saying they have a huge number of chemical bombs that could shred it to pieces in seconds. He tells them that the diving team will take a bomb with them and that their mission is to infiltrate the palace and blow it up. Mingfei asks why they need to blow it up when it's likely filled with treasures and valuable things they could benefit from. Professor Klein says their current technology isn't enough to capture the entire palace. He explains that Mingfei and Nono will form Team B, while Caesar and Ren will be Team A, and that Team A is responsible for the bombing. Mingfei is relieved that he will be away from danger, but Ren tricks him by assigning the bombing task to Team B. Mingfei asks Ren if there's a chance they might encounter a dragon in the palace, and Professor Klein responds that it's possible, but if it happens, it won't be a problem because it will be in a dormant state. When it escaped from the jar, it was in human form, and to transform into its dragon form, it needs a long period of rest to regain its strength. Mingfei asks why Norton wants to return to his dragon form, and Professor Klein replies that Norton wants to become a dragon to use his Yenling, Dragon's Flame, as he wants to avenge his brother Constantine's death. He explains that their mission is simply to destroy the palace so Norton has no place to rest and transform into his dragon form because if he transforms, he could use his powerful Yenling to destroy the world. Mingfei and Nono descend to the gate, and Professor Klein instructs them to put the key's blood into the Guardian's horn. However, the Guardian slightly injures Mingfei's hand, causing him to panic and want to abandon the mission, but Nono stops him. The gate opens, and the current pulls them both inside. Nono loses consciousness, but Mingfei carries her and places her on a rock in a dry area. When Nono wakes up, she asks Norma about the air quality around them and if they can breathe it. Norma confirms that the air quality is good, but Nono questions why the air quality is good in a place that has been sealed for centuries. Norma responds, saying the only explanation is that the dragon Norton has returned to the palace and reactivated it. Professor Klein asks Nono to give him a report on the place they are in. Nono says they've entered the palace and that there's nothing unusual. She mentions they're now in a very long corridor. Professor Klein explains that a long corridor indicates it's an old tomb, and the entire corridor is filled with statues. Mingfei says the place looks like an old religious shrine and he's scared they'll be sacrificed to some strange god. Norma mentions that I Cheng and Aki were in the same place, but back then there was very little air inside, so they kept their masks on, unlike Mingfei and Nono. This means the air has changed, which indicates that the dragon Norton has returned and reactivated the palace. Mingfei gets scared and asks if the dragon is with them in the palace. Professor Klein, who had said the dragon should be in a dormant state, now changes his tone and says the dragon could be awake and active. Their mission is to find the dragon's lair and plant the bomb there. However, Professor Klein tells them the same thing he told Lars, Aki, and I Cheng. The mission is important, but their lives are the priority. Nono asks Professor Klein how they can find the lair. He tells her they need to taste the water. Mingfei tastes it and says it's fresh. Professor Klein confirms this as another sign that the palace is reactivated. He explains that the dragon needs water and oxygen to recover and orders Mingfei to pour the dye into the water. The dye will flow towards the source, indicating the direction of the lair. Mingfei and Nono follow the dye to find the lair. Mingfei, looking around, tells Nono he's scared of the statues, but Nono shouts at him to focus on the mission. The statues seem to be watching them. As they run, Nono tells Mingfei about how ancient humans used to worship dragons and offer sacrifices to them, including human sacrifices. They reach the same place where Aki and I Cheng were at the bronze pillar. Mingfei concludes this might be where they died and runs away, telling Nono to run too. Suddenly, the water flow stops, and the dye remains still. Mingfei is overjoyed, saying it's perfect because they can plant the bomb and leave. Nono looks ahead and tells Mingfei to close his diving mask. He hesitates but does it. She closes her mask too, then kicks him into the water and jumps in after him, instructing him to dive. Nono explains to Mingfei that the water is flowing downwards, indicating a passage. They need to reach the passage, as Norton's lair is likely in a difficult-to-reach place. When they reach the bottom, Mingfei starts screaming, causing Professor Klein to think something terrible has happened. It turns out the bottom is filled with skulls of people who died burned. Professor Klein is puzzled and curious about what happened in the palace for all these bodies to be there. The pilot suggests someone must have attacked the dragon's lair in the past, causing the dragon to roast them. Klein tells Nono and Mingfei that what's important is finding the entrance. Nono takes Mingfei's hand, removes the bandage from the guardian's wound, and places his bleeding hand on the ground, saying it's the gate. A huge whirlpool forms, and the connection with the ship is lost. Professor Klein and Caesar both use their Yenling to find out what happened to Nono and Mingfei. Back with Nono and Mingfei, the gate opens with Mingfei's blood and they find themselves in a peaceful, simple place. Nono says she didn't expect to see this under the gate, and they start exploring. The place is so serene and simple that Mingfei jokes the bronze dragon must have been broke. They enter the small building and find a candle still burning. Nono suggests it has been burning for 2,000 years, likely connected to a fuel source by the dragon. They want to ask Norma about the candle, but their connection is cut. Nono reassures Mingfei they'll use it to go back up and find the ropes. Nono starts having visions of the people who lived there, Norton and Constantine, and tells Mingfei to sit at the table and not interrupt her. She begins reenacting the conversation between Norton and Constantine from 2,000 years ago, seeing how they lived together. When she comes to, Nono says there was a man and a young boy living there, brothers, with the older brother taking care of the younger, who was sick and couldn't leave the palace. They lived an ordinary life, with the older brother teaching the younger to read and write. The older brother was often lonely, sitting alone watching the sunset. Nono concludes this is undoubtedly the bronze dragon Norton's lair. She sets the timer on the bomb, allowing 20 extra minutes to get back up, but as she places the bomb, she notices the candle has no fuel source, meaning it hasn't been burning for 2,000 years but refueled by someone, implying Norton is there. They run back to the gate, using Mingfei's blood to open it, and return to the surface, finding the place changing and collapsing. They use Mingfei's blood again to reopen the gate and return to the dragon's lair. Mingfei deduces something must have happened to Aki and Yicheng, meaning the exit is likely below. They descend, finding a gate, and use Mingfei's blood to open it. Back on the ship, Caesar is worried about Nono and wants to dive to search for them. Professor Klein insists they wait an hour and if they don't return, they'll move. Meanwhile, Nono and Mingfei are sneaking through many mazes. Nono admits they're lost without any means to contact Norma. Mingfei remembers what Mingzi told him about the black sheep wall map. Mingzi, sitting on a throne, says all Mingfei needs to do is ask the world for help, and his request will be fulfilled. Suddenly, Mingfei hears Finger's voice calling him. Mingfei shouts back, asking Finger to send them a map quickly as they're lost and can't find their way out. And it's revealed that someone is using Professor Klein's brain to transmit information. Finger tells Mingfei that Rank F members get scrap computers, so he needs some time to access the information. He explains that the map has changed since the last time it was used. Finger informs Mingfei that the palace is collapsing, so they need to use a different path to escape. He instructs them to enter the door below them quickly as time is running out. Despite limited information due to being rank F, Finger requests access to rank B information from Professor Klein. Dissatisfied, Finger decides to hack into the school's system to access rank S information, where he is greeted by Eva. Finger asks Professor Klein to overlook the hacking this time and begins guiding Nono and Mingfei out of the palace. Meanwhile, on the ship with Caesar and Professor Klein, the pilot reports that the water temperature is rising and approaching 50 degrees Celsius. Ren suggests that the Imperial Dragon has started moving and will try to catch them. Professor Klein is in poor condition due to the mental strain, and Ren states that he's unfit to continue leading the mission. Ren appoints Caesar as the new mission leader and he immediately starts giving orders. Caesar's first task is to determine the dragon's location, but the ship suddenly shakes violently. A student reports that something has breached the ship and set it on fire. They discover it's the dragon's tail, which pierces the ship's belly and kills it. Caesar is puzzled as to why the Imperial Dragon Norton attacked without triggering the alarms. Ren speculates that the dragon might have abilities like invisibility or hellfire, but Caesar insists that the dragon must have been hiding under the ship all along. Caesar orders the engines to be activated, aiming to escape. Despite the ship moving at high speed, the dragon continues to chase them. The main engine fails, and they switch to the secondary engine, with Caesar instructing the pilot to push the engines to their maximum. Suddenly, Ren tells Caesar that the creature chasing them isn't the Imperial Dragon. Caesar is confused until Ren points out a figure watching from a distance, engulfed in flames. Caesar realizes it's the Imperial Dragon Norton. Norton jumps into the water, blocking the ship's path. Caesar orders the ship to stop, unsure of Norton's intentions. Norton calls his servant dragon, Samson, and when Samson arrives, Norton stands on his head, thanking him for his years of service before brutally killing him. The crew wonders why Norton killed Samson, only to see Samson explode and resurrect with greater power, with Norton standing atop him, indicating they've merged. From afar, Mai observes the situation and tells her companion on the phone that Norton took over Samson's body to save time. Mai receives orders not to kill Mingfei but to eliminate Norton if necessary. Back with Mingfei and Nono, Finger continues to guide them through the palace. Suddenly, while swimming, they encounter a body in a school diving suit. They realize it's Yixing's body, noting he gave his oxygen tank to Aki, ensuring she could surface. Mingfei expresses admiration for Yixing, and Nono agrees. They find Yixing clutching an important item he found in the palace, which Aki couldn't carry due to her burden. Finger yells at them to hurry, so Nono bids farewell to Yixing and tells him to take care of Aki. The place starts collapsing, forcing them to move quickly. Despite following Finger's directions, they can't find the exit, and Mingfei panics, shouting at Nono for a solution. Suddenly, Mingfei has a vision of someone scolding him for relying on others to make important decisions and comparing him to the brave Yixing, who chose death for the mission's sake. The person in the vision tells Mingfei it's time to rely on himself and advance with his strength. Returning to reality, Mingfei assures Nono that Yixing's presence indicates they are on the right path. He explains that the dragons have been watching them since they entered, intending to trap them for an unknown reason. Finally, they reach the door, but Mingfei's wound has healed, leaving them no time as the wall is about to collapse on them. Nono tries to hold the wall while Mingfei cuts his hand again to open the door. The knife falls into the guardian's mouth, so Mingfei decides to bite his finger, causing his mask and oxygen supply to fail, and he passes out. Back on the ship, Caesar orders the pilot to return to their previous position despite their lack of ammunition and broken engines. Nono saves Mingfei, but their oxygen supply is halved. When Mingfei wakes up, he's happy they escaped the palace, but Nono explains they are still 80 meters underwater. The high pressure and Mingfei's damaged suit mean even a brief cessation of breathing could cause his lungs to explode. Nono insists on giving Mingfei her suit and swimming to the surface herself, as she promised to protect him. The ship arrives at the docking site and lowers a diving bell into the water. In a desperate attempt, the university sends Zhou Zihang to help them kill the Imperial Dragon Norton. Mingfei puts on Nono's suit, praising its high quality. As they swim upwards, the bomb they planted in the dragon's lair explodes, releasing gas everywhere, causing Mingfei to worry about Nono's safety. When Caesar hears that Zhou Zihang is coming, he says, even if he comes, what can he do? There's no point. Ren asks him why, and Caesar asks if she knows Zhou Zihang's Yanling, to which she responds, the ruler, before quickly going silent. Caesar doesn't notice and continues, saying they are fighting a fire dragon, so any fire-related Yanling is useless because it's a lost cause. Caesar orders the crew to prepare the missiles, but Ren informs him that all their missiles were destroyed. Caesar clarifies that it was the chemical missiles that were destroyed, but they still have regular ones. The pilot tells Caesar that regular missiles won't damage the dragon, but Caesar says he doesn't need the explosive power, just the speed. He explains that their missile type, Storm, is unaffected by water and will be further accelerated, so if it hits something at high speed, it will cause significant damage. Ren is impressed by the idea and says they need to fire from close range to prevent the dragon from escaping. Caesar instructs Ren to stand by the missiles and fire when he gives the command. Caesar faces the Imperial Dragon, but suddenly the dragon stops chasing them. Caesar realizes the dragon sensed danger. Caesar asks the pilot if they have reached Mingfei and Nono's diving point. The pilot confirms and hopes the two surface soon. Caesar checks on the missiles, and the pilot assures him everything is ready. Ren has gone to the launch room to fire the missiles manually if necessary. Caesar blindfolds himself, using his Yanling, Weasel Scythe. Darkness surrounds him and the dragon. The dragon welcomes the enemy, and Caesar responds with bullets. The pilot explains Caesar's first shots were to distract the dragon. The next one will hit. The shot hits but has no effect, causing the pilot to worry. Ren explains Caesar's goal was to anger the dragon, making it focus all its rage on him, ensuring it won't escape. Caesar continues provoking the dragon with gunfire, coordinating with Ren, who says the missile room is extremely hot, measuring 70 degrees. The pilot warns firing the missiles will increase the temperature further, risking an explosion. Ren bets her life on the chance it won't explode. As the missiles are ready to fire, Caesar orders the ship to approach the Imperial Dragon at full speed. The pilot fears the dragon will escape, but Caesar assures him it's trapped. Caesar stops using his Yanling, revealing Zhou Zihang above the dragon in a plane. Ren realizes Caesar used them as a diversion for Zhou Zihang but doesn't understand his exact plan. Zhou Zihang unleashes the ruler's flame on the dragon, causing a massive explosion that temporarily blinds everyone. Caesar removes his blindfold, revealing he used it to protect his eyes so he can fight now when no one else can see. Caesar orders Ren to fire the missiles. They hit the original Imperial Dragon, killing it, and it sinks into the ocean. Zhou Zihang tells Caesar the plane is severely damaged and he needs to return quickly, clearly injured. After Zhou Zihang leaves, Caesar finds his ears bleeding from the missile launch noise. Ren checks on him, needing surgery herself. She asks Caesar if he's okay, noticing his voice sounds strange. He responds in sign language, saying his hearing was damaged by the missile noise. Ren asks why he knows sign language, and he explains he learned it for his mother, who lost her hearing after giving him her Yanling. Ren shares that she learned sign language as a child because she didn't talk to anyone and didn't understand herself, so she used sign language to talk to herself in the mirror. Caesar tells her she'll be his eyes, and he'll be her hands, vowing to complete the mission together. They high-five, forming an unbeatable team against the Imperial Dragon. Ren says all that's left is for Nono to find the diving bell and return. Mingfei and Nono swim towards the diving bell light. Nono opens the door and lets Mingfei in first. Just as she's entering, a dragon's tail suddenly strikes her. She quickly shuts the door, trapping Mingfei inside as she dies in front of his eyes, helpless to save her. Mingfei cries loudly, telling Nono not to die, unsure of what to do besides crying, it seems. Suddenly, Mingzi summons him in a dream, telling him that screaming and crying won't help. He needs to remember his Yanling to defeat the dragon and save Nono. Mingzi says Mingfei acted like he was dying, which is why he came to see him. But Mingfei ignores him and goes to sleep. Mingzi is surprised and asks what he's doing. Mingfei says he doesn't have time and needs to rest to recover as much as possible for when he returns to reality. He tells Mingzi not to summon him into the dream again when he's busy. Mingzi tells him that time is passing in the real world while he sleeps here. He pressures him more, saying Nono is now bleeding heavily from the dragon's wound, losing consciousness, and slowly dying. After Nono dies, Mingfei will be alone against the powerful dragon and could die at any moment. Mingfei says there's no time for this talk. Mingzi tells him not to worry, time here passes slower than in reality, so when he returns, he will still have the chance to save Nono, but only if he has the strength to do so. Mingfei goes back to sleep to gather his strength. Mingzi asks him if he has a goal in life, calling him a dear failure. Mingfei replies that even if he has a goal, it's none of Mingzi's business. But Mingzi insists, asking him to share it as he might be able to help. He then tempts him, saying he's skilled in killing dragons. Mingfei pays attention to him. Mingzi continues, saying his ability to bring him into the dream in places like this means he's not an ordinary person. Mingzi asks Mingfei why he joined Castle University and if it's worth facing all this danger. Mingfei says his reason is simple. He wanted his parents to be proud of him. However, he cheated on the 3A exam and still doesn't understand why he's ranked S. He wouldn't have deciphered the map without Mingzi's help, and his skills didn't defeat Caesar and Zhou Zihang. He questions whether he's someone his parents could be proud of. Mingzi tells him that good luck is a skill, but joining the student union was a mistake because it led him to this dangerous mission. Mingfei says Nono invited him, so he couldn't refuse. Mingzi mocks him, calling him a failure. Mingfei retorts that Mingzi will never understand him, saying no one ever cared for him or told him his existence mattered. At some point, he began to believe he had no significance, leading to a meaningless life because he didn't know what to do. He stopped caring about anything. Nono saved him from that life, giving him the best feeling he's ever had. Mingzi says she did it out of pity, not love. Mingfei says he doesn't care if it was pity, she saved him, and he doesn't want to stand by helplessly as she dies. He admits he's a big failure but wants to help and save her, not leaving her to die. Mingzi looks at him and says he'll help but not for free. He proposes a deal. He will give Mingfei something in exchange for something from him. Mingzi explains that Mingfei will summon him 4 times, and after his wish is fulfilled, Mingfei's life will belong to him when he feels utterly alone. Mingfei says the price is high and asks what Mingzi can do for him in return. Mingzi says he can almost fulfill any of Mingfei's wishes. Mingfei asks if he can kill the dragon, and Mingzi replies it won't be easy, but he can. Mingfei inquires more about the condition of loneliness in the deal. Mingzi says it's a feeling of despairing loneliness that Mingfei himself will determine. Mingfei agrees to the contract. Mingzi says it's the first time in thousands of years someone has agreed, surprised that Nono changed him so much. Mingfei says he's not stupid enough to sell his life. He plans to avoid summoning Mingzi 4 times, thus not giving up his life. He asks how they will make the contract. Mingzi tells him to extend his hand, casting a spell as he explains that power casts a spell on people, and once they have it, it's hard to resist its allure. He smiles, saying Mingfei has fallen into his trap. Mingfei feels happy to have someone calling him brother. Mingzi completes the contract, opening many Yanling skills for Mingfei like Gathering, which strengthens Yanling power, and Naglos, which stops others Yanlings. Mingfei is surprised by the names and asks if they are real. Mingzi confirms and adds he has a 3rd skill called Survival, saying he can now save Nono. Mingzi explains that Gathering lets him control life itself. Mingfei asks how to use these skills. Mingzi tells him to say the words, and everything will work. He also gives Mingfei the Weasel Scythe skill, warning him not to overuse high-level Yanling powers to avoid losing control. Mingzi kicks Mingfei back to reality. Mingfei transforms, breaks the diving bell door, and reaches Nono. He gives her an oxygen mask and uses the Gathering and Survival Yanlings to remove the dragon spike from her. He ties her to the bell's rope and pulls to signal the ship. The pilot assures Caesar that Nono and Mingfei are alive and will return safely, asking for medical teams to be ready for potential injuries. After pulling Nono up, Mingfei returns to the dragon to continue the fight. Mingzi tells him Nono is safe, and it's time for the main event. Mingfei says he's ready but realizes Mingzi didn't unlock any offensive Yanling skills for him. Mingzi says he already has the tools he needs for the fight. Mingzi explains that the Boxy Xing had contained 7 chemical weapons made by Norton, representing the 7 deadly sins: pride, envy, wrath, sloth, greed, gluttony, and lust. Norton made them because he believed the dragon's downfall was due to committing the 7 deadly sins. So, Norton created 7 weapons to judge them. Using the right weapon for the sin doubles its effect. For example, Mingfei could easily cut Norton in half with the Wrath Sword when Norton is angry. When Norton uses his Yanling, Mingzi tells Mingfei to steal it with Naglos. Once Mingfei says the words, Norton is sealed and unable to use his Yanling. Mingfei challenges Norton to a night-to-night fight, opening the box of weapons. Mingzi is surprised when Mingfei can't summon the Wrath Sword but gets gluttony, pride, and lust instead. Mingzi says it's all wrong but can work, warning Mingfei to be careful because his opponent is strong. Mingfei attacks Norton with the weapons, but Mingzi notices he struggles to move in the water, helping him move more freely. Mingzi encourages him to defeat the fire dragon, and Mingfei launches into action, slicing the dragon into pieces. And Mingfei keeps attacking the dragon very fiercely, but the dragon still doesn't die. Here, Mingzi tells him that he must finish it quickly because if the battle drags on, it won't be in his favor at all, and that the dragon is waiting for him to tire out so it can attack and kill him. So Mingfei thinks about death and says that if he dies, no one will notice, and the people who will mourn his death will probably forget about him by dinner. Even those who cry for him will get over it quickly once someone consoles them. The only person who might genuinely be sad is Finger. Mingzi takes him into a dream and asks if this causes him sorrow and if he's desperate with the world, to please let him know so he can take his life right away. But Minfei tells him that he never had a girlfriend before, so he has to live for his future girlfriend. But Mingzi knows he's just talking nonsense and tells him that he knows he's fighting the dragon because he's thinking about his friends on the ship, and if he dies without stopping the dragon will probably kill them all without any chance of survival for them. So Mingzi continues and tells him that he has to fight with all his might for them. Mingzi also says that the strike must be in Norton's body, not the dragon's body that has merged with him. Here, Minfei uses the ermine's scythe to find Norton's body. At first, he can't hear because everything is very noisy and he can't hear anything. Mingzi tells him to calm down and remember why he's fighting because those feelings will give him the strength to continue. Minfei says all he wants is to save Nono and his comrades on the ship. Then he calms down and starts focusing and indeed pinpoints Norton's location. Minfei launches and attacks Norton at great speed until he reaches Norton's real body. He hesitates when he finds Lao Tang and starts asking him what he's doing there and if he remembers him. But Lao Tang doesn't respond and grabs Minfei's neck, trying to strangle him. Minfei is about to die when Mingzi comes and brings a sword, placing it next to Minfei's hand. Minfei grabs the sword and stabs it into Lao Tang's back. Mingzi says this strike is enough to kill him because he lost half his power when his brother died, plus he hasn't regained his strength. Minfei floats upwards while looking at Lao Tang and reminisces about their memories together and how much he loves him. He says Lao Tang kept looking at him until he sank into darkness. We then go to the ship where everyone is gathered around Nono, Caesar, and the doctor to check on Nono. Nono finally wakes up, and everyone cheers, and Caesar is happy as if there's no one still left in the sea. Minfei floats in the water, completely drained of his energy, thinking about Lao Tang, whom he killed with his own hands. Suddenly, Ren appears, noticing him alone. She asks him if he can swim or if she should pull him up. He says he can't swim, so she pulls him up and tells him to buy her a fancy dinner later. Minfei asks her worriedly if she eats a lot. From a distance, Mai is watching everything, waiting for her opportunity. We discover that the Emperor Dragon Norton is still alive and escaping. Mai says his spirit is very strong, and it's her turn to fight and be the last nail in his coffin. She takes out the philosopher's stone bullet, the same bullet that killed his brother, and shoots him with it. This time, the Emperor Dragon Norton dies, who loved his brother and the sunset and his simple home more than anything else. Mai calls in and reports that Norton has been dealt with and is dead, and Minfei is alive. We then go to the ship, where everyone is watching the explosion that killed the dragon for the last time. Ren asks about Zhou Zihang, and they tell her he is being treated and waiting for new orders. Minfei goes to have tea with the director, who praises him for scoring full marks. He tells him that there are 4 ruling dragons, but each dragon is 2 brothers like Norton and Constantine, so there are actually 8 of them. He says the black dragon created them this way to be stronger and not die easily. Minfei asks the director why dragons appear in human form. The director tells him that if the dragon appears in human form, humans will be less cautious around it. The director takes out an envelope and gives it to Minfei. Inside, there is a picture of Lao Tang sitting with his friends. The director says his name is Lao Tang, and he grew up in an orphanage after his adoptive parents died. After high school, he moved to the slums and worked to support himself but was always broke because he constantly donated his money to the orphanage he grew up in. The director tells Minfei that he knew this information before the mission started but chose not to say anything because he knew they were friends. Minfei asks why Lao Tang became the Emperor Dragon. The director replies that he didn't become the Emperor Dragon, he was always the Emperor Dragon. He just remembered. The director talks about the dragon Norton and says he lived in a bronze palace in the north. He got involved in the war and died in it, but before he died, he created a jar and put a cocoon inside it to shape their new bodies. The older brother emerged from the cocoon first but lost his memories. Minfei says Lao Tang was in his 20s, but the director replies that he was actually over 100 years old. He traveled the country until he was adopted, fully convinced he was a normal human until he remembered his past. Minfei says he thought they couldn't kill the Emperor Dragons. The director says this case is different because he was weak, having to merge with a weaker dragon, and didn't have time to create another jar. That's why they could kill him. If Norton had regained his strength and used his ruling flame Yanling, he would have caused massive losses in lives. Minfei asks if Norton hated humans that much. The director replies that Norton did this to avenge Constantine, who sacrificed his life to protect his brother Norton. The director tells Minfei that their friendship would have ended even if Constantine hadn't appeared because that's the nature of dragons. The director gives Minfei a letter from his mother, saying that she and his father saw his grades and were very proud of him and eagerly awaited the day he would graduate. The last thing the director tells Minfei is to keep the incident confidential, saying the official reports claim that Caesar's missile killed the dragon. But Nono was attacked in the water by a dragon, so who could have attacked her if the dragon was dead? And if the dragon attacked her, how did she come back safe? Minfei can't tell the director the details of his contract with Mingzi, so the director says he trusts him no matter his reasons and won't ask for any details. Mingzi sends Minfei a phone so they can communicate, and Mingfei wants to break it but decides to keep it. We return to the director, who has Mingfei's 3A exam paper with a picture of the dream Mingfei saw during the exam in the hall. The director looks at it, especially at Mingzi, and welcomes Mingfei again, and it seems this isn't Mingfei's first time at Castle College.